Hi, everyone. Harry here to talk about an announcement from the Department of Justice, Office of Special Counsel, that they are undertaking an investigation of Jack Smith, the prosecutor, of course, for the cases against Donald Trump that had such a tortuous path and eventually ended in embers when the election came and the trials couldn't be initiated in time. Okay, but a word about Jack Smith, a guy who is, by any measure, a patriot who took on an important job for the Department of Justice as it was constituted then, and the notion that is now near and dear to the political agenda of Trump and company, that he's some kind of, he's been vilified. Anybody who worked on his cases have been sacked from the Department of Justice. The prosecutions themselves have been in Orwellian fashion, just completely called politicized. Politicized, of course, has to mean that the facts and law aren't there, and the facts and law were there in abundance. It's one of the many crazy strokes of luck and circumstance and political fortune that Trump was able to dodge them, and not just Trump. One of the cases was brought only against Trump to streamline, but with clear co-conspirators of all the president's men and a woman or two, the Mark Meadowses of the world, the Jeff Clarks of the world, the Steve Bannons of the world. By any reasonable measure, in the times that these were being pursued, they were solid, righteous, more than that, completely essential. Imagine the notion of witnessing an insurrection, an attempt to violently cut off the peaceful transfer of power, the number one incident of a democratic society, and do nothing. So it would have already been crazy and kind of disgusting for Trump to come into office and just throw everything out the window. But that's not nearly enough for him and them. Rather, there's this Orwellian, again, he's really the philosopher for our age, campaign to completely set everything on its ear, with Jack Smith himself being the figure in the center, the deep villain, and they are going to try and are already trying to make his life miserable, expensive, insufferable. So he wishes to his bones and dying day he had never accepted the call of duty, really important call of duty for the country. Okay, so the Office of Special Counsel. It is an office within the Department of Justice that has a small and distinct role. It is there, this is so ironic, to police the general prohibition, statutory mainly, the Hatch Act, against, you got to throw up your hands and laugh, against people in the Department of Justice acting politically and for political reasons. Now, that's the new job description of the Department of Justice. Last week, the Deputy Attorney General goes down personally to Florida to interview Ghislaine Maxwell with no law enforcement hook. It's just a political mission in Donald Trump's interests. Everything that Ed Martin Jr. did, most everything that Alina Habba in New Jersey, and now Janine Pirro in D.C., it's nothing but political action in violation of the Hatch Act, which is the least of it. But to top it off, they're not only investigating Jack Smith, but they're doing it for violations of the Hatch Act. And here is the notion. The suggestion actually comes from Arkansas Senator, fellow traveler, Tom Cotton, who has alleged. Check this out. I will recover now my calm, because just reading this, it's so absurd and nasty. But here's the charges to be investigated. Basically, Jack Smith tried to get a jury trial before the election. He understood the whole thing was at risk of evaporating, and eventually did evaporate. And they are calling that effort a violation of the Hatch Act, because it's political. Why political? Because it was affected by the election. So Smith asked for a jury trial January 2nd, 2024. Now, normally you would have more time, but they're looking at the election coming at them like a freight train. And there's the real possibility, as indeed eventuated, that the whole important righteous prosecution would just dry up and go away. So to push against that possibility, Jack Smith asked for the jury trial to start January 2nd. And also in a court of appeals pre-trial proceeding, he pressed for a trial before the election by asking for expedited review by the appeals court. I mean, eventually it came to the point where the time was ticking, and everyone in the country and in the court system knew it. And he forthrightly said, actually, he danced around it, is the truth of the matter. He never said before the election, but he just said, compelling public interest, we need to set the trial, we want, and so he pressed for generally compressed and early scheduling. That is what's now in Tom Cotton's referral letter that the Office of Special Counsel has jumped on. These actions were not standard, necessary, or justified unless Smith's real purpose was to influence the election. So there's this deep sort of confusion, or you could say kind of pot kettle problem with, influencing the election as in trying to make Trump lose, and influencing the election as to trying to make justice occur so it doesn't completely evaporate and, one of the most serious crimes in the nation's history go completely unredressed, as indeed it now has. All right, back to the Office of Special Counsel. That's supposed to be one of the many within the department that is a professional, nonpartisan office. However, early on, Trump reached in. Oh, and by that, there's the statute that sets it up, says specifically, in order precisely that they can be independent, that you can't fire the head of it except for malfeasance or extreme neglect, a strong version of cause. Trump didn't care, and the person who was in there, Hampton Dellinger, he just sacked. No reason, no allegation that he'd been acting improperly, simply just, I don't give a crap what Congress says. I want my people and only my people in there. Hampton Dellinger sued, and that's still working its way through, but it's one of the cases that very unfortunately the Supreme Court has permitted Trump to go ahead with while it's all being worked out, meaning Hampton Dellinger is out. An acting person is in, that's a Trump guy, but also on deck for the permanent position as a super Trump guy. So, in a sense, the fix is in. So not only is this, even in its conception, completely political, and political in the nastiest sort of way. It's not even, we want Trump to win. It's more, we want to basically crush the people who went against Trump for extremely righteous, important reasons. We just want to, squash them like bugs. So it's that's completely political now. Now, a normal, nonpartisan person like Hampton Dellinger, Republican or Democrat, would say, I really don't see this. Oh, and by the way, Hatch Act violations, they're when there are Hatch Act violations, which are rare, it's like people, using their offices improperly to do political activities or really in very obvious crass ways. Not, we want to get the trial in before January, but the head of it is now a Trumpy. And the possibility that completely unjustly, Smith would be on the hook. And he's already, by the way, on the hook for legal bills, all this stuff. It's complete travesty. But that he might be on the hook for some kind of, Hatch Act has criminal violations there. It would be Orwellian, or, Alice in Wonderland as well, that this would be a Hatch Act violation. But that is what's now in the cards in Donald Trump's Department of Justice, and Jack Smith is under investigation by the Office of Special Counsel with its hand-picked Trump loyalist for potential violations of the Hatch Act because he tried to move with dispatch as a prosecutor pursuing some of the most important prosecutions in American history. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.